Greetings. Hope this finds you well. So I came across an Aaron Mate Substack article that was on, I believe it was the website antiwar.com, had the link to it. It's titled, I believe it's titled Biden's Armageddon from Ukraine to Gaza. Yes, Joe Biden's Armageddon from Gaza to Ukraine. So I had it backwards. So I thought it would be worth checking out. Mate usually does pretty good work. Obviously, he's on the Gray Zone. He hosts that weekly live stream, usually on Fridays, with Max Blumenthal, and he has his show Pushback. And it sounds like he's coming out with a book as well. I think maybe it's on the Ukraine proxy war. I forget what it was on, but the White House prioritizes hegemony over humanity. And yeah, that's accurate, right? Private Manhattan fundraiser 1 year ago this month, Biden shared an assessment that he had not told the public. From his vantage point, again, this would have been, after the Ukraine proxy war had started. Biden told the room of Democratic Party donors the world would face, quote, the prospect of Armageddon for the first time since the Cuban Missile Crisis, and that was, 61, 62. At the time, Biden's referring to the conflict in Ukraine, which had just intensified with the bombing of the Nord Stream pipelines, which there's a lot of evidence that the U.S. or the West was responsible for that. And Russia has declared annexation from four Ukrainian regions, despite noting the dangers of a proxy war against Russia, world's other top nuclear power. Biden has nonetheless pursued the highest priority of enforcing U.S. hegemony by attempting to weaken it. Accordingly, Biden has continued the proxy war with a signature policy of flooding Ukraine with weapons, encouraging a failed counteroffensive, and blocking diplomatic off-ramps. So, they're wanting to keep this going as long as possible. 1 year later, Biden is not only doubling down on his apocalyptic approach in Ukraine, but adding a second front in the Middle East. Look at this. The White House has asked Congress for a new spending package that would provide over $14 billion for Israel's assault on Gaza and more than $61 billion for Ukraine. That is $75 billion, right? Money printer always go for the goddamn war machine. Anything that creates death and destruction and is good for the defense contractors, military contractors, because there's nothing defensive about that, right? Money printer go, but anything that actually, promotes peace, improves the material conditions of the working people, particularly the most oppressed elements here or abroad, fuck that. How are we going to pay for it? Largest such request since Russia's February 2022 invasion. Concurrently, the U.S. is directly assisting Israel atrocities, standing virtually alone to block global call for ceasefire. Almost 3,000 kids have been killed, 7,000 people overall. I believe somewhere around 15 to maybe 18,000 injured. Fully supported by the Genociding Biden. Axis of Evil playbook to draw a direct tie between the Ukraine proxy war and Israel's assault on Gaza. Hamas and Putin represent different threats, but they share this in common. They both want to annihilate neighboring democracy. Oh, fuck off. Yes, Ukraine is so democratic. Outlying opposition parties, not holding elections, having far right parties, in power, emboldening Nazis, etc. Yes, that's very democratic, and yes, same criticism obviously applies to Israel too. There's no fucking democracy, obviously, particularly if you're, Palestinian or Arab in general. Made in America. Yeah, so weapons are made in America. Fuck yeah, brother. Let's make some more weapons to go kill Palestinians and go kill more, more Russians in Ukraine. Arsenal of democracy. How disgusting, just that phrasing, trying to say, bombs, the arsenal of democracy, the cause of freedom. Oh, fuck off. Fuck right off. Jesus Christ. Yeah, so he's trying to tie the two funding together because the funding for Ukraine at this point does not have as much political support as the funding for Israel, and their genocidal ethnic cleansing campaign of the Palestinians has more support. So he's trying to combine it together. Um, Yeah, if it wanted to, the White House could call on Israel to accept a ceasefire and pursue negotiate release of Hamas captives, on top of the four that have already been freed. According to Washington Post, one U.S. official is clear Netanyahu, not going to wait until the hostage crisis is resolved and initiate a ground offensive. Little Washington do to change that calculus. But again, are they actually going to invade? We'll see. They seem pretty hesitant to, because anytime they send ground forces anywhere, they usually, for the most part, get their asses kicked and then have to, you know, call them back and then, send the fighters in, because there would be significant losses on the Israeli side if they were to initiate a ground invasion of Gaza. Um, let's see. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, the U.S. Could obviously pressure Israel to do a whole lot. They're not, right? Defense minister acknowledges government agreed to allow some humanitarian aid into Gaza after U.S. pressure, which was paltry. It was like 20 trucks went on an average day pre carpet bombing, pre siege, pre cutting off food and water for 2 weeks. I believe there was somewhere around 500 to 600 trucks coming in, and they were going to allow 20 to 30, which is like one for every 100,000 people, which is obviously a fig leaf for genocide, right? Just so they could keep perpetuating this. Um, 700 killed in one night. Humanitarian pauses must be considered. um, long as a pause is considered, then we're good with the genocide. I mean, yeah, it's insane. Hostages and civilian casualties will be secondary to destroying Hamas. That's the Israeli worldview, Israeli government view. Prime Minister Nir Barakat, we shall do all efforts to bring our hostages back alive, but destroying Hamas is the first and last priority. Yeah, non-existent priority is the fate of Gaza's 2.3 million residents who are facing what Martin Griffiths, UN top humanitarian official, described as the reach catastrophic levels. Yeah, 20 trucks I talked about. Not include any fuel which powers hospitals, water pumps. Obviously, you need that to, like the bakeries and the stores need that as well. Incubators for freaking babies. No bakeries. Yeah. The move to exclude fuel was to keep it away from Hamas. Jesus Christ. Yeah. A drop in the ocean of need right now. More than 60%, 1.4 million people have been displaced. And again, this is one of the most densely populated areas in the world. It's about 25 miles long and 5 miles wide. Was a concentration camp before, has now become an extermination camp. Biden admin also acknowledges touted aid package does not meet the bare minimum of Gazan survival. Build that flow up to levels necessary to begin to meet Gaza's needs. You're falling way fucking short there. So they're sending 3-star generals over there and others to advise the Israeli military for its planned ground invasion. I don't think that's actually going to... I mean, we'll see, I guess. Since the assault began, Israel and Hezbollah, based in Lebanon, right, exchanged fire along the South Lebanon border. So, I mean, if Israel does invade with ground forces, I mean, Hezbollah, you would think, would ratchet up their efforts towards Israel. You would think. The attack on U.S. forces from Iranian-backed groups are understood to be a direct result of the Gaza slaughter. For more than 6 months, Iranian-backed militia groups refrained from launching drones or rockets against American troops in Iraq and Syria. The undeclared truce between Tehran and Washington. Just as the lives of Palestinian civilians and U.S. Israeli hostages are subordinate to imperative U.S.-Israel hegemony, so are U.S. forces, right? Yeah, I mean, the Iraqi parliament voted, say, we don't want you here, U.S. troops, U.S. military, get the fuck out. They're still there. Same with Syria. Yeah, more than 5,000, over 7,000 now, I believe. More than it's 2,700 children, 900 unaccounted for. Not that of the Biden White House. Growing stain on our collective conscience, UNICEF. Content to sacrifice countless more civilian lives from Gaza to Ukraine in its dogged embrace of Armageddon. Morally ashamed, yeah, 100%. Pretty interesting article there from Aaron Mate. Joe Biden's Armageddon, from Gaza to Ukraine. Again, you thought like proxy war in Ukraine could have really disastrous consequences. We see obviously what's happening to the Palestinian people, the ones in Gaza, the ones in the West Bank, ones in the other occupied territories, right? Type of death and destruction and repression and that they're facing. Pretty staggering in both of those, Armageddon scenarios, brought to you and fully supported by the U.S. government and the Biden administration. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.